Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. This is Alex Bradley from Anything Geeky Reviewed. It's good to see you all again. I have a new idea for hopefully a kind of episodic show that will kind of be done whenever I get an idea or whenever somebody else has brought me an idea, and hopefully I'll do a video on it and explain it and put it out there. Now, the idea behind this kind of series is game ideas. We have a lot of kind of indie developers out there now. We've got a lot of new ideas coming up from kind of nowhere, and some of them are absolutely brilliant. Some of them maybe not so good. Maybe it's just the way they're done or what. But yeah, there's a lot of ideas out there now, and obviously every gamer has their own set of ideas. Every gamer has their own kind of theories on what they want to make for a game, what they kind of think should make the perfect kind of game, you know what I mean? So I thought I'd do this series, see how many out there, of you out there that kind of want to help me make this series, help me kind of get ideas, and we'll start sharing ideas of games that we think could be really cool ideas. So yeah, I think this would be a really good opportunity to kind of explore some more out there ideas, maybe kind of experiment a little bit, because that's what independent developing and all that kind of thing does a lot more than the kind of AAA games that we've been seeing lately. They kind of stick to the old kind of style that's made them lots of money in the past, and that's it. What I want to do with this is I want to kind of bring a load of new ideas from you guys, from myself, from anybody who wants to kind of share them. The ideas can be used for anybody. Anybody can use the ideas. If you want to be credited in it, just say, and I'll mention that when you guys share your ideas with me, and I'll put that in. But you don't have to credit me for any of mine, if mine are any fucking good anyway. I just want to kind of have like a channel of, a series of videos that have ideas of games that we want to kind of see in existence. Maybe it's just going to be kind of like a feature we'd like to have, like a completely random and open world, or maybe it's actually kind of more a game type and design that you've already got laid down, maybe somewhere in your head somewhere. We're not all game developers or programmers or even artists, so to kind of get our ideas out there, maybe someone out there may pick them up at some point and go, actually, that sounds like a good idea. Let's see what we can, let's run with this as far as we can. So yeah, my idea for today, I've got a couple which I'm going to do kind of one on each episode. The idea actually came from a series of science fiction books that a friend showed me. They're from the Harrington series. David Webber's the writer, and it's a series that dates back to about 1996, I think. It's got about 13 or 14 books in the series. It's quite a big series so far, and he's still writing them by the looks of it. Now, I've only started reading them in the last 6 months or so. The idea comes from the books because of the way they're written and kind of the events that take place within the series. Now, the idea is based around the combat and the manoeuvres and the ships within the kind of the story and the universe of Hannah Harrington, which is the admiral, originally the commander, the lady who starts the series right from the beginning, not being very trusted, works her way up through society and becomes an admiral, and starts leading engagements of huge hundreds of ships, hundreds of thousands sometimes even of LACs or fighters as they call them. So yeah, I think this could be a really kind of cool idea. We have quite a lot of science fiction games at the moment. We're actually getting a kind of massive resurgence of 4X games even. We're getting quite a lot of them. X3 is still taking off quite well. We're getting a lot of kind of Star Citizen Elites coming back. All the classics are kind of coming back, and we're quite looking forward to all that. But one of the few things I've noticed is that the strategy sort of side of it hasn't necessarily come back completely or evolved any. We've got more MORE, which is kind of a more traditional Masters of Orion. We've got Predestination, which I've done a video on, which looks absolutely fucking awesome. We've had Horizon, which hasn't been great, but they tried. We've got maybe one or two others that I've kind of missed that have been kickstarted or Indiegogo'd, and they are coming up from nowhere. But I find that a lot of them are not kind of breaking new ground. They're redoing the same sort of games that we've already had in the past, or most of it's the same sort of game. What I kind of like from this series is the whole idea is old yet new in a kind of weird twist. A lot of the ships within this series are based around naval ships, old kind of hammerhead, wooden ships from the old navies in the 18th century, and ship combat is based on lines of ships battering each other with missiles and lasers. So it's kind of old, Admiral Nelson kind of days, with the old sort of naval combat before you had kind of metal steel ships, before you had kind of remote control, long range bombardment. You had to get in close and personal, and you had to hit the sides of the ships to kind of do your damage. And this series starts off like that and then evolves, so it doesn't necessarily require that old kind of mechanic of having to fight that way. But what I like about this series is not just that it evolves, but that it's something very different. It has its own idea on how combat works, and it does a lot of things that I have noticed. I haven't really had any games that does it. One of the main mechanics, actually, I quite like and would love to see in a game is a picket, or patrolling the forces. Some of the books are based around on a Harrington picketing or patrolling a specific system, or other people patrolling specific systems, guarding against attacks. Now, often, not a lot is going to happen. In the books, some people have been in certain systems for 2 to 3 years, just sitting there. Maybe going for a month back to the home system, retrofitting their ships, coming back, and that's it. That their station is there. They are guarding that system. Now, we haven't had a lot of that. Probably because it sounds quite boring, and to be honest, it probably is going to be quite boring. But there are things I think you could throw in there that could spice things up a little bit. One of the things that they do in this series is they simulate battles. They keep their crew kind of entertained, not just entertained, but well disciplined and well trained. If they don't have enough ships to do a live fire exercise, or maybe they just don't have the time. I mean, organising your ships, as well as patrolling, you've got to organise your ships to play combat against each other, basically. Isn't always going to be useful, or it's going to always be useful, but it isn't necessarily going to be the best use of your time, especially when you're out patrolling and you've got nothing else to do. So I think that a simulation mechanic, maybe, imagine a world where you've got a couple of different empires fighting each other. You get a choice. You can become a captain or commander of one of those fleets. I mean, even if the developers, whoever, maybe take this project on, you could even start as like an ensign, like in Star Trek, and work your way up. But the overall idea and the end gameplay of it would be you commanding a ship, then maybe a small squadron, and then maybe a fleet, and then even beyond that, maybe you're making decisions for fleets, not just one fleet. But maybe if you start with a ship and you have to keep your crew well disciplined, well trained, and it shows, the way your ship manoeuvres shows how good your pilot and navigator is. The way your ship jumps to different destinations shows how good your astrographer, like a geographer, but in space, to study stars, knows exactly where locations are, has good maths. They can work out how far you need to jump to certain destinations. The more you train them and the more you keep them active, the better they are going to be when the ship does hit the fan. So there's a simulation idea in there where you can actually play out battles. Instead of you just sitting there on patrol, you can sit there on patrol if you want, looking over reports, or you could be having, half an hour later, you could be in a simulation while you've got a backup crew, making sure nothing's going to go wrong during the patrol. You've got your main crew on the simulation, and they're battling it out and having a good time, practicing their skills, that sort of thing. I think that could be really quite cool, and something different. It's not going to be for everybody's taste. There are going to be plenty of strategists out there that aren't going to want to take this on or even have a go at this, but I think it's something new, it's something different. There's a lot you can play with it as well. I mean, that's just one portion of the kind of game I'm talking about. Got a list of a few things here that I'd like to kind of maybe implement into that. I mean, obviously crew control, training them up, teaching them how to do jobs, maybe having a first officer which is a lot more intimate with you. You plan battles with them, and then obviously as you become admiral, you get senior staff and they can then help you out. But I kind of want a game that evolves naturally, but also that feels open and big. You know, you like I said, you want 3 or 4 empires fighting against each other, maybe, but not maybe you're not always at war. Maybe you you have a 6 month time where you've got a peace or ceasefire, and you're not necessarily at war, and you can kind of have a bit of R and R, you know, that sort of thing. It is possible. I mean, for anybody who's played Space Rangers or any kind of old action adventure game, those games were brilliant back in the day because they made wonderful adventures out of text, out of nothing. You know, some of them didn't even have images, and yet reading along, it was almost like you're reading a story, you were taking part in that story. There are ways by doing it, especially Space Rangers 2, you know, and 1, some of those side missions were the best missions you had in the game. Forget the combat or the fancy graphics of the interface, the actual text adventures were some of the best bits in the game. You know, even if you have to do it that style for some of the periods where you're having a break, maybe there's a peace treaty, you don't have your ship in order, or you've just lost your ship, you know, there are ways of kind of getting between that and the rest of the game. Yeah, let's have a look at some of the other options. Obviously, fleet maneuvers, crew control, random events. You know, maybe if you're picketing a force or you're a commander, you're only in a destroyer or something, and you're not always going to be having action. There's not always going to be someone coming into your system and attacking your system. So maybe, you know, you have your simulations, but maybe a random event happens, you know, something weird. Maybe an attack does happen. You know, you've been guarding a system for a couple of months and nothing happened, and boom, out of nowhere, a small raiding force of pirates or the enemy force come in and they try and attack it. Which brings me on to the next thing. As a commander, or as maybe a captain, or maybe a higher as an admiral of the fleet, you know, guarding a specific sector, I'd like there to be a facility to plan, to foreplan before battle. So, you know, you've got to patrol an area, but how you do that is up to you. You know, you can obviously spread out your picket forces, your destroyers, kind of your outer range sensor platforms. They can detect when an enemy force is coming in, and then pull back and warn everybody else. But then at that point, you've got something else planned. You've got a way of maybe, like in the books, shutting down all your systems on your ship, going into stealth mode. So only the enemy knows that there's destroyers in the systems, but they don't know accurately how many ships you've got because they can't detect them at first. You know, maybe you can detect a sensor platform coming into your system. You think, hang on, that's not one of ours. Who the fuck sent that? You know, try and follow it out the system and find where it's heading, or, you know, intercept the data feed for where it's going. You've got a kind of whole list of options, but the idea of actually planning a counterattack or how you would respond to an attack, you know, this is what the simulations are useful for. You can kind of run a simulation and say, oh, this is the likely force that we're going to attack. Nothing any more powerful than this is going to come to us, because we're not a very, you know, either powerful system or resource hogging system. You know, we don't have a lot, but taking us out might be a military advantage to the enemy. So this is the sort of force they're going to send at us. How would we best repel it with what we've got? You know, and then you can work out a way of doing that. You can run simulations and figure out what your best approach is. That's kind of what I like about this idea. Is you've had kind of games like Masters of Orion where you can control an empire, you can build, you know, fleets of ships, and you can sometimes control the combat. But there hasn't really been any much need for tactics or strategy in the longer sense, in the practice sense. You don't prepare for a battle most of the time. You just kind of go into the battle and go, well, it's fairly clear I have a big advantage, I'm just going to play that to my best approach and go for it, you know, maybe outflank the enemy. But that's all you kind of get. You don't really pre-plan, and I kind of like the idea of pre-planning. It adds another sense of tactical depth to it. You know, maybe you can beat a much larger force by using your noggin and what's available to you rather than just brute force. Obviously it could always go the other way and you could still lose. That's another point for this actual idea, is I'd like the ability, so you can't always win. And that sounds weird, especially for a game, because we play games for enjoyment, but no matter what you go up against, in most games nowadays, you're expected to beat whatever you go up against. Everything. No matter how big, how nasty, or whatever. There's very few instances where you actually have to retreat. And unfortunately, in real life, retreating is part of real life. So, I'd like an option that, if you're either launching an attack or you're defending from one and you think, my backup plan isn't going to work. It's either too many enemies, or the forces they've got are just too fast, too strong, whatever. I can't defeat them without losing. So what do? Do you carry on with the attack or the defense knowing you're going to lose, which is what most games expect you to do? I think that's completely unreasonable. For me, as an admiral, or even as prime minister of an empire, I would rather save my experienced personnel and their ships than waste them in some useless attack. So I'd like the option for the commander, or whoever's in command of that unit at the time. It might not actually be you; it might be an AI. You might be a lowly commander or captain under the command of a computer-controlled AI, and it'll be their decision. You may be able to weigh in on it, but it'll be their end decision that will say, okay guys, we can't win this, let's get out of here. Let's scuttle all the charges on as many platforms as we can, so they can't nick any of our research or technology, and then let's get out of here. We do have to leave these guys on their own. They're not going to bomb the planet. In the series, they've got like a Radini policy. It's like a system someone bombed once, and they made a pact that nobody would ever launch a missile or any kind of weapon on a planet's surface again. So they actually have to be quite careful when ships are near a planet's surface, because obviously missiles can be quite unruly. They're not 100% accurate, and in this you've got all sorts of jammers and everything to stop a missile hitting you. So if a missile does kind of backfire and miss a target, it's going to go for whatever's behind it, and that sometimes could be a planet. So little kind of things like that mean you can't necessarily do what you want. You could, but the outcome of it might not be what you want, or you may get fired or whatever. There should be kind of like an end circumstance where whatever you've done is not been the best choice, and that kind of backfires on you, which is what I like about this idea. Like I said, it's different, it's something new. It uses what we already know about sci-fi and what we already know about tactics and command, and tries a new approach on it. So yeah, we've got patrolling, simulation battles, events, large combat areas, and shifting system control. So yeah, you've got 3 or 4 systems. Imagine if it's actually quite live, like PlanetSide 2. How areas can be captured or lost depending on operations. Once you're an admiral, you can then move in and you can command your own influence of area. You've got your own fleet. You decide what targets to take. Each target has its own significance, whether it's a small planet with a small population but a rich asteroid field around it for great metal supply, or whether it's a shipyard. Maybe you could capture the enemy shipyards. Each system you take could be a big tactical advantage, but while you're doing that, the enemy is then also operating against you, taking some of your systems. Maybe there's an element in here which could be quite cool for multiplayer. I don't know, but I like the idea of just being able to kind of jump in. You're the commander of a ship right at the beginning, and you've got to listen to your admiral's orders, but you've got a bit of kind of free roam what you do on your ship, how you train your crew, how you prepare your crew. No matter what you're going to come across, there's always going to be something new. There's always going to be a new weapon that the enemy has and it's just brought in, or you've got a new weapon. So you've got to make sure you're trained up on your own stuff, make sure you're trained up on theirs, and prepare for the unexpected. Maybe if you played it a couple times, I don't know how long this game could be, you could kind of forethink and predict what could happen, which might be classed as cheating, but eventually you learn from your experiences, and that's what it counts as. You've had this experience before, you know what to kind of predict. I think that could be a really interesting and fresh idea, and something new. It's probably, some people are probably going to think, oh, that sounds boring, that sounds crap. I think there's going to be ways that we can spice it up, ways that we can make, maybe patrolling systems not so boring. At the end of the day, how many of us have wanted to command our own ship? So this is kind of an idea around that, and strategy and all that kind of thing. Let me know what you guys think of that. I've got 1 or 2 more ideas I think we're going to explore via this, and see what you guys think. But yeah, if you've got any comments, drop them in the box below. If you've got any ideas, let me know below and I'll contact you. We can discuss it, and then I can do a video on it, on what you think is a good idea and what you'd like to see, because games are for us. So doesn't it make sense for us to maybe give some ideas back to developers and get them to kind of listen and say, look, this is what we kind of want, you know, help us out here. You know, do you like the idea? Come and help us make it then. You know, yeah. So drop down any ideas you've got in the box below, and I'll see what I can do about making them, you know, into a video with your help, of course. And make sure though you don't, you know, just want to be credited if you do want the idea to be used. If you want to kind of receive any money, I'm not that interested. You know, I want this kind of to be free to use for everybody. Indie developers often don't have a lot of money. They're the ones that may take this up, not the big companies. So yeah, try and, you know, get their ideas. And unless you're going to use them in the future, they're not worth anything to you at the moment. If you'd rather play the game, which most of us would, rather than earn something from it, then, you know, that's better for all of us, I think. So yeah, cheers for your time, and I'll see you all soon.